For today's keynote, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce University Professor René Mayrhofer, head of the Christian Doppler Laboratory for Private Digital Authentication in the Physical World, and head of Institute of Networks and Security at Johannes Kepler University, as well as director of Android Platform Security at Google, whereby I would like to point out that Professor Mayrhofer represents the academia in today's event. Professor Mayrhofer will give a talk on managing digital identities from contact tracing in the crisis to future virtual passports. As the title indicates, he raises the interesting and pressing question what we can learn from dealing with the current crisis for future uses of digital identity, including virtual passports and other government-issued documents. How can we balance usability, security, and privacy requirements in this context? Professor Mayrhofer, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to represent some aspects of the excellent research happening in Upper Austria for this August round. As you can probably imagine, we are currently thrilled and in intense internal discussions about the intended establishment of a new technical university, which does not happen often. While maybe a little bit surprised by the very highly positive press announcement, we happily take on the challenge to create such a new cornerstone of Austria's academia, augmenting the long history of existing institutions. I was asked in this keynote to talk about the mission and use of science with relation to policies and the global crises. This is an interesting question, and I'll try to do my best to answer it at the end of my short keynote. The first counter question, however, is which of the crises? As I unfortunately have little to contribute to the ecologic and climate crises, I will focus more on the crisis of the Covid-19 pandemic and information system security, especially the rampant abuse of personal sensitive data and how I see those two to be interlinked. This is the part where I talk about my current scientific area of research. Any secure communication, for example, instant messages, voice or video calls, or a remote bank transaction require a form of digital identity. That is, some form of an identifier such as a username or phone number and proof that an individual actually owns this digital identity. Providing such proof is typically called authentication. When we think about authentication, what might come to mind is our laptop and desktop computers or our smartphones. Entering that PIN or password, or using our fingerprint, face, iris, or other biometric authentication when we unlock the screen again and again is happening so often that it has already become second nature. But digital identity is so much more these days. We are opening doors with NFC plastic cards, we pay wirelessly with NFC credit or debit cards, and we use digital tickets for public transport as part of our daily lives. All these examples rely on so-called attributes, like our fingerprint patterns, the permission to access a particular door, our account balances, or possession of a valid month or year pass for public transport. However, we never use all of these attributes to describe aspects of our digital life at the same time. For entering an underground train, you shouldn't need to transmit your full name, place of residence, account details, or your apartment door keys. We pick and choose which aspects of ourselves we present in which situation. Well, that all sounds nice and fancy, but what does it actually mean in practice? Right now on the web or our smartphone with specific apps, we still tend to juggle with a multitude of independent accounts. Putting on my security lecturer hat, I, of course, have to repeat the scientific wisdom to use a unique and sufficiently strong password for each of them. However, we also know from scientific research that most people, myself very much included, have trouble remembering around 100 different passwords, some of which we only use about once a year for submitting tax reports or creating on the spot for the restaurant's contact tracing list. That is, passwords don't tend to work well for one-time use accounts. On the other hand, physical world interactions that require authentication, like for example entering a building or even crossing country borders, still require separate physical cards and documents to be carried. That is one of the reasons why our digital identities are already moving onto our mobile phones. We can use the phone itself as a password manager to unlock building doors and cars, pay wirelessly, and use transport ticket apps. One bridge between the physical world of interactions and the digital world of attributes is to keep them all on the single device that we seem to be physically carrying anywhere, anyways. Unfortunately, this increased use of data on consumer devices brings us directly to the current crisis of bad IT security and abuse of personal data. Luckily, we can do better, and scientific results have already started to influence the direction of mobile identity for better security and privacy. One example is a mobile driving license, or in the slightly further future, a mobile passport, which combine a set of highly useful attributes and are issued by a government agency. For a traffic check conducted by a police officer or a border crossing, all of these attributes are transferred and verified, including full name, date of birth, a face picture in high resolution, potentially a place of residence, other biometric features, and driving license or passport-specific data. As there are still some places on Earth that don't yet have solid network connectivity, including very exotic places like tunnels or parking garages, this should still work when the phones are offline. From a research point of view, that in itself poses a number of interesting challenges. But as the driving license or passport are widely available government-issued documents, they're also used for many other scenarios outside their original purpose. However, for cases like age verification, most of the included attributes are not actually necessary for the interaction. For entering a club or buying alcohol, it shouldn't be necessary to transmit our full name, place of residence, or the fact that we might be required to wear glasses to drive a car. Yet, handing over one's physical driving license to a bouncer or salesperson does exactly that. That's the first case where a digital version can provide much better privacy guarantees than the physical version of that particular ID. Selecting the age verification profile on the holder's device will only transfer the face picture and age, not even the full date of birth in such a case, and nothing else. Another example is using public transport. Even when not linked to a name and therefore sometimes called anonymous, location traces are highly sensitive data. From the places an individual visits during their days, it is often trivial to determine not only their place of residence and work, but also religious beliefs, illnesses, hobbies, or other particular preferences. Scientific research has made it clear for over a decade that de-anonymization or relinking of such data traces is often very easy and that existing policies for anonymizing data are not sufficient. Transmitting a complete location trace to pay for the use of public transport with our smartphones therefore seems completely out of proportion. With a well-designed digital authentication system, that also isn't necessary. The only relevant attributes are the place of entry and exit for a particular journey, or even better, a proof of possession of a valid time-based ticket such as a monthly subscription pass. Now is the perfect time to talk about the second crisis, which is the one on top of most people's minds because this is also about location. Contact tracing is one tool for mitigating pandemic virus spread like the current COVID-19. In this case, the relevant attributes are that a contact has happened between a pseudonymous person X for Y minutes on a day set, and nothing else. The complete location trace throughout the day is not required and can be dangerous if leaked and abused. I'm very happy that in this case, scientific results on the balance between privacy and utility for contact tracing have been directly and quickly used to shape policy. And most countries that have a mobile contact tracing app do so with data minimization in place. Rapidly rotating pseudonyms are exchanged through local radio channels, specifically Bluetooth Low Energy, and stored in a decentralized manner only on the smartphones involved in a particular contact. Others are enabled to link those pseudonyms when no infection occurs. This allows to tackle one crisis, the pandemic, without making the other one, abuse of personal data, any worse. If we now think further ahead, maybe 5 to 10 years, we can predict that digital identity will move from phones even more into the environment, into the cloud. One technique that offers a way to bridge usability, security, and privacy is biometric authentication. Using various sensors, an individual's fingerprint, face, voice, iris, gait patterns, or many other biometric features can be used to identify that individual. The often portrayed vision is that we should be able to walk through the world without having to carry any physical keys, documents, or remember other forms of identification. What we don't have to carry can't be lost, broken, or stolen, and that includes our smartphones. There are now different ways to implement such biometric digital identity. The obvious and technically simpler approach is the use of centralized databases. All biometric features and relevant identity attributes can be stored and linked and queried from there when crossing a country border or entering public transport. The Aadhaar system in India, with centralized biometric data of over 1.2 billion citizens, has been the largest example of this approach since 2016. The second option is a decentralized approach, to assign each individual a personal proxy, a so-called personal identity agent or PIA. This remains under the possession and control of that individual. The owner can decide where to execute this agent, for example, on which cloud provider or on a smartphone. Moving the agent from one host to another should be as simple as keeping multiple copies for better availability, which is directly within the spirit of modern and highly influential regulation like the GDPR. Both the centralized and decentralized approaches have their own advantages, but also their own challenges. Before deciding on one approach, both need therefore to be analyzed and compared systematically. In the nationally funded Christian Doppler Laboratory for Private Digital Authentication in the Physical World, we are analyzing and building prototypes for the non-obvious decentralized approach. They're directly here in Linz, but with an aim of potential global deployment. All results will, of course, be published and code will be released as open source to share with the world. This is where I end my excursion into our own pet topic and scientific research and come back to try and answer the original question. What can science do for society to help deal with such crises? Our environment, society, and the rules and policies that regulate it regularly pose important challenges that need to be solved. Sometimes, those challenges even manifest themselves as crises, such as the Covid-19 pandemic or rapid climate change. The main use of science for those challenges is to ask the right questions and come up with potential solutions. Typically, there will be multiple alternatives. Science can predict the outcomes of choosing one alternative over the other. But science does not make policy decisions. Science can only prepare for those decisions based on fact or at least state-of-the-art theory. Those decisions need to be made by the whole society and executed by regulation, by policymakers. COVID-19 was and still is one of those examples where science and policy making worked very well together. Predictive models of infection rates were directly used as decision helper points on a weekly basis, and in turn were and still are updated based on new data as well as changed rules of society. Contact tracing apps were made and deployed at scale based on scientific results on how best to balance utility for society, which is the contact tracing part for limiting the pandemic spread, and privacy for individuals. We were able to deal with this crisis as well as we did so far because science and policymaking tightly worked together. Climate models have a much longer history in science. Quite unfortunately, policy has often not been based on these scientific predictions, and the climate crisis could therefore act as a counterexample, where science and policy have for too long not work together as they should. However, I am happy that we see first signs towards actions that are maybe a bit as decisive as those taken for dealing with the COVID-19 crisis. For example, the EU intention to further tighten CO2 emissions by 2030 even. We are still optimistic that science and policy together will be able to address this second crisis as well. For data security and privacy, we are still mostly at the beginning. There have been debates about data retention, new ones about face recognition and tracking of users on the web, and various smaller fires based on specific security incidents like the many ransomware infections that corporations face. However, the big policy decisions of how a primarily humanistic digital future should look like, how we are going to identify ourselves in video calls, in public transport use, in country border crossing, or in contact tracing, are still to be taken. I strongly propose that these should also be done together to learn from what did and what did not work well in the other crises. Science needs to point out and compare the alternatives, like, for example, here, centralized versus decentralized data collection and handling. And civil society, together with policymaking, need to set the course. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions either now or, of course, later through the various digital channels. Thank you so much.
Professor Mayrhofer, many thanks for your talk, sharing with us your detailed insight on managing digital identities. Having set the stage with this revealing keynote, we will now go a step further in connecting the best and learning from each other. The next item on the agenda is the RLS-Sciences Roundtable, a discussion of lead scientists, which will be hosted by Dr. Florence Gauzy. Dr. Gauzy, I kindly ask you for your opening statement to this discussion.
Thank you, Nora Mack, and thank you to you, Professor Mayrhofer, for your excellent contribution and remarks. Nothing could give a better transition to our RLS-Sciences Roundtable on Regional Crisis Management with the 4 RLS-Sciences research groups. They bring expertise across disciplines and boundaries in long-term collaborations. Today, they will share some of their insights with us. Each speaker has 10 minutes, plus 5 minutes discussion. We will take some questions. If you send them, please, via the chat function. And we will start immediately with the Renewable Energy Network, represented by our RLS-Sciences President, Dr. Sebastian Goers. Sebastian, please go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. On behalf of the Energy Network, it's a pleasure to present today to the political level and also to our other RLS-Sciences project the approaches for navigating the RLS region's energy transitions during and after the COVID-19 crisis. What is the purpose of our statement? As we heard, this COVID-19 pandemic has developed into a global public health emergency and also causing an immense economic crisis. So governments, they have engaged in policy actions and aiming at containing the virus, providing effective healthcare and preventing economic collapse. And this is essential. The COVID-19 crisis is emerged at a time where energy and climate policies were experiencing an increased momentum. So the goal of our statement is to support RLS policymakers via displaying the impacts of COVID-19 on the energy sector and also offering crisis management, recovery approaches and exit strategies from sciences and practice from our regions with regard to regional energy transitions towards low-borne carbon energy systems. What's the background? Energy transitions in the RLS context. First, let me just shortly begin with the 6th Regional Leaders Summit in Sao Paulo in 2012, for the topic Sustainable Energy and Development. The Scientific RLS Energy Network was initiated subsequent to this summit, and it was agreed that renewable sources of energy require extensive research. So this was the birth of our network. And going a little bit further, in 2018, 2 years ago, the summit at Quebec, there was the Quebec Joint Declaration on Energy Transitions. And there our network got the direct political commitment and mandate to support the political level with regard to energy transitions until 2013. Yes. And the RLS energy transitions, they are analyzed in our roadmap, the so-called Regional Renewable Alliance, where all 7 regions are contributing. And under the lead of the Energie Institute, we were able, with contribution from the regions, to collect data, to analyze data, to derive strategies for the political decision makers. And this is what you can see here, our work on the monitoring report and the SWOT analysis. And if you have a look at the role of renewable energy in the 7 partner regions, we could identify strengths and opportunities. For example, strengths for renewable energy, for example, usage, the potentials. There is a sound legal framework in the regions. There is a lot of research and development ongoing, a lot of expertise and conversion and storage of renewables. And there also emerge opportunities. Green economy, contributions to climate protection, and technical innovation. And from our point of view, these strengths of the RLS regions of renewables and energy transitions, they offer ways to manage and recover from the COVID-19 crisis impacts. Let me just briefly show you impacts of the crisis on energy. Here you can see on the first graph the impact of the global economic activity and mobility. There was a big decrease on the energy demand during the first quarter of 2020. On the other hand, in the other graph, you see that renewable has energy, they have proven to be more resilient than other parts of the energy sector because of larger installed capacity and priority dispatch. As you can see, there's a decrease in all other energy technologies, and there is a slightly increase in renewable technology. So renewables are not immune to the COVID-19 crisis, but they are more resilient than other fuels. If we're having a closer or more detailed look, this is also what we did in our data monitoring and SWOT analysis. We're going to the electricity level. Electricity systems with high shares of renewables, they continue to operate effectively. And during the shutdown, we could see that the share of renewables in the electricity mix, they grew in many regions. Since renewable power plants have close to zero marginal costs, they are more economic effective, and because they sense to be dispatched first. And our data compilation shows that the 7 RLS regions, they integrate different forms of renewable energy, wind, solar, biomass, hydro, geothermal resources in their regional energy systems, and also contributing to the regional energy transitions. In the face of the economic COVID-19 crisis, we also heard of using energy transition frameworks as roadmaps for stimulus and recovery packages over the short, mid, and long term. We heard that already from the political statements. And policy measures and investments which aim at stimulus and recovery, they can rise national and regional energy transition strategies. For example, via investments, recovery measures could help to install flexible power grids, energy efficiency measures, electricity vehicle charging systems, energy storage, green hydrogen, and multiple other clean energy technologies. From our work we did in the roadmap, we see clearly that the development of renewable energy has led to an increase in the number of related jobs in the selected RLS regions. Here you can see data or numbers for Bavaria, Quebec, Shandong, and Upper Austria. So going more on the regional level, what are the insights for Bavaria? Our colleagues from Bavaria told us that the COVID-19 crisis indicates that independent energy generation, the expansion of renewables, and energy security, they are crucial for the energy system. So in this context, we would like to highlight the project Danube to Gas. It was already presented and discussed in our RLS Energy Network meetings in Sao Paulo and Quebec last year. And it focuses on energy security at the interregional and regional level. Project goals are the integration of unused biomass and surplus renewable energy into the energy market. The aim is to enhance diversity of energy resources, storage, and distribute it within the Danube region. The lead is from our partners of the energy network, the technology center from the university, Applied University of Landshut, and the Energie Institute is proud to be a partner of this project. So going from Bavaria to Georgia, our colleagues showed us, or data from our colleagues showed us that there is an expansion of renewable installed capacity. And also, Georgia's Department of Economic Development, they provide instruments and methodologies to analyze green stimulus recovery packages. So this first one would be the sustainable community projects, where they have a look at the outcomes, economic and socioeconomic effects of new technologies and investment, and also the sustainable materials management project, which is based on life cycle assessment of goods. These are cooperations between Georgia's Department of Economic Development, Georgia Tech, and also the Environmental Protection Association of the United States. A step further to Quebec. Yes, insights from Quebec. And there we see initiatives in the energy sector in the context of COVID-19. First of all, Transition Énergétique Québec announced improvements to its energy conversion, innovation, and efficiency programs to support a green and resilient recovery. Crucial to the researchers is also the topic of food sovereignty. So in the context of COVID-19, recovery efforts have fostered collaborations among local stakeholders, and food security or self-sufficiency has given rise to promising energy-related initiatives. And our partners from Quebec also offer local research and development for regional and international cooperation supporting the energy transition. Thank you. Insights from Upper Austria. We were talking about green investments as a recovery strategy, and in this context, I would like to highlight the work of the Energie Institute, where we are measuring multiple dividends of Upper Austria's energy transition or the application of sustainable energy technologies in Upper Austria. We are applying macroeconomic and socioeconomic impact assessment models, which were developed at our institute, and having a look at double dividends of different energy technologies. Simulation have been undertaken also for the Upper Austrian government and also industry partners, and the results show that including renewables and efficiency in economic stimulus packages can be justified by the structural benefits, as they can bring job creation, economic development, and also a reduction of emissions. So there are multiple dividends, and this is what this model can analyze and display. Also, insights from Western Quebec and Western Cape. Investment into green economy infrastructure is also seen as a key element of economic recovery. Western Cape provincial government achieves this through a partnership with the green economy sector, a development agency, Green Cape, and they create direct economic stimulus through, firstly, the industrialization opportunities of renewable energy, and on the other hand, creating an environment for building renewable energy infrastructure. We had interesting insights yesterday at our forum Ecology, and there they displayed, for example, a recent focus on resolving rolling blackouts via Green Cape's alternative service delivery unit, and also supporting communities located within informal settlements. There was an example, for example, a free wireless LAN or Wi-Fi enabled solar street lighting project in Whitsand, which is an informal settlement in Cape Town. So these were some best practice examples, some exit strategies from the energy network, and summing up, from our view, energy transitions, they are already underway in the RLS regions. By making the energy transition an integral part of the wider recovery strategy, the political decision makers, they can realize a substantial progress towards health, inclusion, wealth, and resilience. We have seen that recovery and stimulus packages focused on energy transition, they could help to overcome the economic collapse. So they generate much needed jobs in the short term, in the midterm, and also in the long term. When we account then for the carbon dioxide emissions, we are talking about this double or multiple dividend. And research and innovation are vital to improve the technologies for energy transitions. And the last point would be that while the COVID-19 crisis has strengthened this vision of a more resilient society in the nations, in the countries, in the regions, we see through our work that international cooperation is needed and is necessary and important to oppose the crisis. So the RLS Energy Network scientists and experts from the partner regions, from all 7 partner regions, we provide the knowledge and instruments from different and all relevant disciplines to support the policymakers from the RLS regions in navigating through energy transitions during and also after this COVID-19 crisis. Our network, it's teamwork, and on behalf of all the different scientists and experts from all regions, I would like to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Sebastian, very much. We experience in the background colleagues who have troubles joining in, joining out. Nevertheless, we try to support you individually, but please all mute, close your microphones. It would make it easier for all of us to listen. Wanted to add this. On the inside, I will try to speak louder. I hope it helps. Thank you for feedback. Now, knowing that many questions that we have already relating to both presentations so far, I would ask first Professor Drexler to give his talk, if this is okay for you, Professor Drexler, and then we will make a short break after for questions to the 3 first speakers, and then go further with the program. after the session with questions, if you all agree. Meaning that Professor Drexler, I'm very happy that you are with us today, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Florence, can you hear me?
Yes, now.
No, this is Sebastian von Upper Austria speaking.
Oh.
Maybe
you could answer the first question, Sebastian.
Of course, I would be happy to do so, yes.
So the question is coming from Michael Hinterdobler. I assume you can see it. Sebastian? No?
No. Maybe you could read it.
Yes, thank you very much for this interesting presentation on the renewable energy developments. It's surprising to see that the demand of renewable energy is not decreasing in the same way as other sources.
Yes, this is compared to fossil fuels. First, on a global level, this is because of a larger installed capacity and also priority dispatch. So I think we've seen this with a slightly increase of renewable energy, and in many regions, I showed this also in one slide, renewable power plants, they are more efficient from an economic point of view. They're close to zero marginal costs, so it makes sense, economic sense, that these energies are dispatched first. This would be the idea behind that. This is what we saw from the data.
Thank you. In the meantime, I would have a question for both of you, Sebastian and Professor Mayrhofer. What about getting acceptance of the users to the solutions you suggest, and how to make sure that solutions that are technically sound, that are scientifically proven, that are also, as we hear, economically feasible, are also used by the users.
Professor Mayrhofer, you would like to go first? If not, okay, I would like to respond this from the energy perspective, or for the energy network, or the stuff we were looking at. I think the legal framework is one important pillar because of that, and for renewable energy, for example, subsidies, they could be an effective tool to give incentives, but also market-based instruments, for example, taxes or approaches like that. And we see that depending from region to region, instruments like this, they are applied. Talking about market-based instruments, for example, in Quebec, there is a emission trading system going on. But there's also, and this is what our work in the roadmap, especially in the SWOT analysis, shows that the different regions, they have sound legal frameworks to give incentives to use renewable energy.
Thank you, Sebastian. We will try again with Professor Drexler. Any success with the microphone?
Hello?
Yeah. Professor Drexler, no, that's not... Professor Mayrhofer, please.
Yes. I'm sorry that I just had to step out for a minute and I missed the question. Could you please repeat the question?
Unmute. We were asking the question of acceptance on the side of the users. So how to make sure that users use the solutions that we propose solutions that are technically feasible, scientifically proven, that are also economically feasible. But how to make sure to guarantee acceptance?
Yeah, thank you very much for that point, because that is indeed one of the most important ones that we see for digital identity. If we design a system that from a scientific point of view is cryptographically sound, has perfect privacy guarantees, but only 10 people in the world can actually understand it sufficiently themselves to believe that, yes, this is the case, then we have a problem with acceptance. And quite honestly, it is one of the issues that we do not yet have a very good idea of how to deal with it, simply because if we want to bridge this very fine gap between having secure solutions, making sure that nobody can fake their own digital identity, can fake that they are employed by a certain organization, that they have a valid monthly travel ticket, or clone a digital passport, while at the same time making it really, really hard to abuse the data. So, for example, if you use those tickets to enter and exit the public transport every day, then simply the fact that you enter at a station A and exit at station B could be linked together. If you want those to be unlinkable, as we say, then the cryptography that is involved in those protocols is unfortunately complicated. And within the research team, we might get ourselves to believe that, yes, we hit the right balance. How do we tell the public that it actually does what it's supposed to be? I've been slightly involved in the discussion with the contact tracing apps. So that API that Google and Apple, together with scientific researchers, developed on how to make contact tracing apps that do respect privacy, in the sense that, as I mentioned, they record that there was a contact to somebody. And if an infection occurs, then this information that, hey, an infection has occurred on that day can be passed on without revealing too much detail. That had the same problem of trying to make sure that people understand that. And I think we have not done a very good job to do that. At least the debate in Austria has been fierce with civil societies, with privacy societies there. And media communication hasn't been accurate to the point where we would say that this is actually how it represents what's going on. So I think you hit the key point. We need to do better there. And the best answer that I so far can come up with is how many people can actually ascertain for themselves that their car is safe. That the car that they drive, where they can actually cause loss of life and limb and really cause damage, that this is a safe vehicle to drive. There are more people who can do that than judge cryptography, if it's secure or not, but still it's something that the general population cannot do. So we rely on certification. And this is exactly one of the interfaces between science and policy making, where we need certification schemes. We need an organizational structure to make sure that those systems do as they should, have some experts judge that they do that, and then communicate that to the public. But if anybody in this round has a better answer, I would be thrilled to take this on.
This is a question for us, for all of us, in probably all of our regions, and ongoing debate. I believe that, thank you for your honest answers as well. I believe Professor Drexler is ready on the phone, and we will have his presentation on the screen. So let's try the technical challenge here. Thank you to both Sebastian Gers and Professor Mayrhofer. Professor Drexler?
Okay, so let's try my phone. So sorry for the inconvenience we tried before, but now it doesn't work. So it will work now by using the mobile phone. So now we are talking about education. So the global aerospace campus and our mission connecting regions through education. So could I have the next view graph, please? It shows the agenda. So I will present you the Global Aerospace Campus in a nutshell, just to give an overview what we are doing, what are our plans. And we will talk about e-learning and our special contribution during COVID-19 on education, on connecting regions globally, and to help students and professionals to extend their know-how also during this crisis. And then some interesting announcement, hopefully. We will show you what we will do in the future on education and on seminars and on lecturing. So the next view graph, please. So it shows, so we started 2016. This was the starting point of the Global Aerospace Campus being one of the projects, but not technology project, education project, and the contribution to the RLS. So in the meantime, we hosted and organized 4 international conferences. We started in Bavaria, we went to Quebec, and last year it was Sao Paulo. We had 57 speakers from all partner regions, and we had a lot of participants, more than 860 in the meantime. And we have our first online course on digitalization, on aerospace, and I will go a little bit more on detail in the next few graphs. But the next one, please, will show the leading scientists of our aerospace campus. You see, we have scientists from all over the world, from different areas. So it's me from the University of Munich, chair of the Institute for Carbon Composites. We have Luis Rodriguez, we have Roberto Wolf, we have Engelbrecht, we have Roland Hinterhölzel from Upper Austria, Dimitri Madrid, and Li Guao from our friend from China. So we all together are organizing the Global Aerospace Campus. And on the next view graph, you will see the team supporting me in Munich. It's from Munich Aerospace, Gloria Stamm, Jennifer Weisenberger, and Ms. Kompudi. Thank you very much for your very professional help and contribution and support in the background. Thank you so much. Yeah, and the next view graph, the next one, please. We will again show you to summarize what is our mission and what is our contribution, especially during COVID-19. So we try to help to compensate worldwide universities during the lockdown through online quality education, supporting education of aerospace specialists, for example, Airbus or OHB in our region, but still while they are partly on short time and have time for education. We want to strengthen the RLS Alliance in a global market, and this is in correspondence with a final declaration from 2016 and 2018. And we want to enable international exchange and cooperation of global challenges, for example, in the field of green aerospace or Industry 4.0. And we want to provide visibility of a strong international aeronautic and space network worldwide. Yeah, and coming to the next view graph, I will present you the first online course on digitalization in aerospace successfully tested during the last month. So we started our test phase with our own platform in December, and till August we have now more than 816 on-rollers, and the topic digitalization in aerospace and aeronautics and space. So the contributions mainly came from the University of Munich and our partners like the University of Armed Forces, like Bauhaus Luftfahrt, DLR, but also industry partners like Airbus and IABG. And on the next view graph, you see the percentage of online courses enrolled according to the regions. You see, okay, Bavaria, number 1, but we have contributions and visitors from all from all regions like Western Cape, Sao Paulo, Quebec, Upper Austria, and also a small audience from Georgia. Yeah, and I think the next view graph shows a very interesting effect. So we started at the very beginning with around 350 enrollers, and in March, the beginning of the COVID crisis, of the pandemic, you see we have an exponential increase in enrollers. And in the meantime, 72. And so by this, I think we can really say that we can contribute to overcome the crisis in the field of education. So our first online course was very well received. And here on this view graph, you see some testimonials. So from the industry, for example, they were excited, like Mr. Benvenuto from OHB, about the broad horizon we present, and it has to broaden the horizon of industry. But especially Marion from Korea pointed out that the flexibility in learning opportunities regarding place and time is very interesting to her opinion. Yeah, and we had also one testimonial, besides many of them, plenty of them, from Aldo Diaz, a PhD, who was impressed about the scientific depth and the quality of technology. Yeah, and now to the announcement to the future. And there I would like to invite you to listen to our trailer, Air Mobility, and I will tell you in a second what is the meaning of this video and what is our topic, Air Mobility, meaning for the RLS. Could we start the video? Online course, Urban Air Mobility.
Traffic congestions in urban areas and the limited accessibility of remote areas pose key challenges to mobility. Mobility has to become more intermodal, efficient, less risky, and sustainable. Scientists are taking short-distance travel into the skies.
To bring urban air mobility to the general public, researchers assist with finding ideal trajectories for the third-dimension mobility tailored to the regions.
Worldwide, a growing number of researchers and companies are in the process of creating new forms of mobility. To manage traffic, flying taxis are expected to become another means of choice.
Surveys at São Paulo's airports have shown that air taxis have the potential of speeding up South America's biggest metropolis.
At the Global Aerospace Campus online platform, students learn about a new research movement in aerospace engineering and economics. The online course Urban Air Mobility covers a wide range of international expertise, looking at the latest air taxi concepts and the modulation, simulation, and optimization of local transport systems.
The future of air mobility rests in small, environmentally friendly electric air vehicles flying in urban centers. This will push aerospace engineering and electrical engineering to a complete new level.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. I think quite impressive, the topic and the quality of the video, and it can now be used, this trailer, to do marketing for our next online course on global air mobility, And I think it's very important to mention that contributions, lecturers will now come from all partner regions, and it will be really the first global online course we can offer. And it will also be available as MOOC on Coursera. So I think we have now much better visibility and really sure that we have many more interests and enrollers in this e-learning course. And also the course on digitalization in aerospace and space is now available on Coursera, and also there we expect now many more contributors and enrollers. Yeah, and the last topic of my talk and the last announcement, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are organizing every year a summit to bring the researchers from all over the world together, not only researchers, but also students and PhD to do exchange on a specific topic. And the next topic, so our idea was to make a vote on the topic and to ask all our partners, what is the topic of interest for you? And so, you know, in principle, our topics we decided on are cyber and public security, it's green aerospace, it's urban air mobility, it's safety in orbit, and it's autonomous flight. Yeah, and you see here the interest, cyber and public security was number one, but we decided to combine it with safety in orbit, and so more than 50% of the votes can now be reflected in our next summit, and it will be held mid of June 2021, so next year in Bavaria, in cooperation with the Bavarian Research Alliance. So topic, Space for Earth, Mastering Cyber and Public Security with Space Technologies. So hopefully we can meet each other during this summit, that COVID will allow it to meet again, but probably we will also run a hybrid conference. So we are collecting a lot of know-how and experience and all these types of cooperating, but we are sure the Global Aerospace Campus will play an important role. Thank you very much for your contribution, and sorry for the inconvenience. So,
thank you, Professor Drexler.
Yes.
And congratulations on your MOOC, and congratulations also to your contributors from the different regions. It's a major initiative. From aerospace, we will move with no further ado to space. And if Professor Schilling is with us, I would like to ask him to jump into the presentation and give us the views from the space on the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you, Professor Schilling.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you. We work on small satellites in our project, and this means small satellites, it's a cube of 10 centimeters. That's already enough to establish different Earth observation topics, different telecommunication properties. So in the project, we address Earth observation. So I will focus on the project in the first glance, and then I will continue to provide you information, what kind of information can be delivered from satellites to improve our knowledge in the COVID-19 situation. Here you see at the kickoff, in the small part in the hands of our Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, is a satellite. So we are building now in this project at different locations such satellites and try to address Earth observation applications. Ash cloud monitoring from volcano eruptions, cloud height measurements. We can observe lightnings from space in a broad area. In case of emergencies, fires and floods are our main application area. But in regions, very often soil moisture is a problem. And we have very dry summers now everywhere. And preventing fires in the forest is a very interesting application topic we can address with the small satellites. So the project progresses thanks to the support of all the partners very well. And we anticipate a launch in next year. So it will be end of next year that the satellites will be in orbit. And what we can hopefully contribute are topics of benefit for the society. And thanks to ESA, NASA, JAXA, we can already anticipate what can be seen maybe next year from our own satellites. You see here the effects of COVID-19 impact on economic activity and pollution seen from space. The first image you see here is addressing NO2 density, and the left image was an image of China before COVID. And on the right side, you see the NO2 density in China after the lockdown. And it's clearly visible how the environment, the atmospheric composition changed very dramatically. So on this view from space, you can directly derive economic activities. Yeah, here a closer look to Wuhan, and on the top row, you see also the NO2 density, which was pretty high in the year 2019. At the same location 1 year later, you see in January there's still activity. So some economics is still going on, but this disappears completely in February. And this way, you can, even with a very coarse resolution, you can directly see the impact of lockdown situations. Another feature here on the images, you see here an automobile factory in Beijing. This was in 2020. And you observe in particular the empty parking lot where there's new cars coming out of the factory. The same 1 year before, it was completely filled with cars. So you see economic activity, and you see here the car density plotted in this graph. After lockdown, it dropped dramatically, and now it increased. So monitoring can provide globally information about the real situation. So it can be very well monitored what is happening in reality, and this can be compared to statements delivered in TV. Yeah, you can always keep people to the truth because you can monitor by the satellites continuously worldwide. What you see on the right image here, this is the port of Singapore. Of course, you can monitor the ships, but you can also monitor parking areas. And the amazing fact was that parking areas are empty because tents have been erected to treat COVID-19 patients. So from very coarse resolution already, you can draw such conclusions about the evolution of the disease. We go to the next slide. We see here the image of San Francisco. And during nighttime, the lights were like always. But by image processing, you can elaborate differences. And by example, you see here the hospital area. The UCSF Medical Center in January was not too much illuminated. In April, you see a very bright spot. So the San Francisco Medical Center had to accept a lot of people who were infected, and there was day and night shifts running continuously. And you see it directly from the light patterns here from space. Maybe at the end of my presentation, I want to address also the topic of food. And we have a continuous monitoring of food growth and harvesting behavior. Here, by example, the space view from the winter cereals in Spain. The red number are the figures from 2019. The blue numbers are the figures from 2020. And here in the screen, we see how it's distributed all across Spain. Green areas means the percentage of harvested crops, while not harvested are displayed in yellow. So we see due to the COVID, we have less harvesting activity. The production level of winter cereal in Spain dropped by about 1/4, and similar figures are seen worldwide. So from this Earth observation monitoring from space, we can predict already right now that there will be hunger at the end of 2020. The crops are already growing right now, and what is not growing right now cannot be harvested. So it's also easy to predict from space what kind of situation we will encounter in the next 2 months. This was mainly related to Earth observation, and similar techniques will be applied on the small satellites we are producing in this RLS project. Another feature is also, for example, telecommunication. We saw during this COVID lockdown period, a huge increase of telecommunication capacity was needed. So I focused here only on Earth observation because that's the topic of our project in RLS, but we could much further extend also into the telecommunications sector, which was challenged. And here, space satellites provide backup solutions to Earth networks. So if you have a power shutdown, you can continue with emergency transmissions from space in your telecommunication channels. So in home working areas, we in net streaming context, we see bandwidth is limited and we would need not much more. Here also space can significantly contribute in the future. And also this worldwide coverage is quite an advantage in this context. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Schilling, for sharing these pictures and your comments with us. We know the group has been extremely busy to prepare for a first launch. We wish you all the best with the first small satellites in space, and now back from space to Earth, and to Professor Thierry Carsanti in Quebec, Montreal. Welcome with us, Thierry Carsanti, today. You will navigate us through an extremely daily consideration of all of us, working remotely, working from home. How does work in times of COVID-19 looks like?
Here we go. Sorry about that.
Very good.
When you go full screen, you kind of somehow lose that possibility to see all those details and all that. So thank you very much, Florence, and thanks everyone. And briefly, my presentation, I will talk about learning and working from home in the digital era and all the challenges that are related to that. I guess if we have questions, they will be at the very end of the presentation. I'm also going to be presenting some of the elements for the partner regions, so bear with me if there are some details missing. I know the presentation is very, very short. I'd like to say a few words, first of all. Overall, the RLS in the area of COVID-19 there are extreme vulnerabilities in the world order, and the RLS regions were severely impacted. However, there are many opportunities to share both the challenges, the experiences, some of the successes, but also the effective practices that were put in place. And the goal of all that would be to minimize the pandemic effects on their populations. So that said, with the two very particular objectives for which I'm going to be focusing on, the surge in working from home, as well as new trends in the labor market and the central role of cybersecurity in protecting infrastructure during the rise of working at home. What we have to understand as well is that working from home also somehow involves learning from home because many studies conducted internationally reveal that many of the parents working from home had kids, and so they had to cope with both working from home and having kids learning from home at the same time. Working from home, there were key trends during the past few months, surge in home office and distance learning solutions worldwide, both opportunities and challenges in the RLS regions. Science can help inform and shape public policies. And we'll see many of the regions that the public policies adapted, and many of the companies who were sometimes reluctant to let their workers work from home, had to go with that. Changes in the labor market significantly impacted other sectors, and immediate research and ongoing research is needed to address appropriately these issues. In Bavaria, the pandemic has fast-tracked the practice of working from home. Unforeseen challenges with the secure use of digital business technologies from individual homes require attention from both the business world and the public policy makers. The prevalence and practice of home office in Germany, results of two surveys conducted by the Bavarian Research Institute for Digital Transformation. First, some key elements from those surveys. The use of home office increased during the crisis, as it did everywhere else in the partner regions. Many employers did not allow their staff to work from home before the pandemic, and they had to after. The level of reported satisfaction with the current situation is fairly high. There appears to be a strong overall desire to spend more time, and there is a widespread fear that employers will once again restrict work from home once the pandemic is over. So that's a fear many of the workers have. There were also increased cybersecurity issues reported by the Bavarian Supercomputing Center as elsewhere in the world, and we'll see in other regions as well, the same thing in Quebec as well. For the state of Georgia, with a solid IT technology industry as the foundation, state of Georgia has been supporting the forced transition to home office by putting increased efforts in further investments on cybersecurity, further legislative work, especially for small businesses, and overall IT technology industry. Georgia ranks 12th in the U.S. for technology employment. Over 115 information security companies in Georgia. So IT technology industry is really, really big in Georgia. Broadband infrastructure in 2018, Georgia Technology Authority and Georgia Department of Community Services created the Broadband Deployment Initiative to build more access in rural areas. Cybersecurity access for companies to protect businesses is crucial, and the state of Georgia focuses on growing that industry for local access. Legislation is very favorable to technology. Since 2008, there were many initiatives in Georgia. On the educational point of view, 12 universities designated as National Security Agency, National Center for Academic of Excellence in Cybersecurity, and the Georgia Institute of Technology and University of Georgia have NSA certification in research as well. And for K-12 colleges and universities, all of these went online in March, and many are doing so again this fall due to COVID-19. For Quebec, there were also many initiatives in the labor market. Namely, many people work on skilling and reskilling people, and there's a new program with a list of the key skills that are required to make sure that if there's a second wave, or even to make sure after the second wave that the workforce is skilled and reskilled to face not only the pandemic, but to face the evolution of the digitalization of the society in general. Many research initiatives also took place during the pandemic. The future skills required to work from home, that was a key as well. Learning from home was key as well, and parenting while working and having kids learning from home. So this was, again, a great challenge, and many of the studies conducted in Quebec revealed that it was very, very difficult, and there were many challenges ranging from cybersecurity to access to high-speed internet to access to technology as well, because many families didn't have enough computers and all that to face all these multiple challenges. That said, some solutions came to life quickly to meet the challenges of working from home, one of which the Ministry of Education launched a website called Open School. And the idea of that website was to help parents who were working from home to give activities to their kids while schools were organizing to give online learning. So it's something in between, individual work, semi-supervised by parents, but the goal was to help parents who had to work from home, get their kids to school and somehow make sure their kids were, doing something educational. Cybersecurity was a challenge for many of the initiatives we had in Quebec as well. And this is just a screen capture of the number of, just for one website, more than 1,000 threats were, stopped by the firewalls put in place, but that's just for one website. So we had more in the month of July only, we had more than 1 million attacks on Quebec websites. And these are only official websites. For Sao Paulo, the pandemic affected distinct work sectors and activities in different ways. COVID-19 hit hard many vulnerable social groups in Sao Paulo and affected the world of work by creating many new categories of vulnerable groups, such as those related to informal working activities. Preliminary research on the remote working activities shows the psychological effects related to working from home. The state of Sao Paulo is also responsible for the primary and secondary education of almost 4 million students. And there's also, the pandemic revealed there's unequal access to IT infrastructure and home learning conditions. Of the 3.7 million enrolled students in Sao Paulo schools, a fairly large number received their mainly daily meal at school. And again, during the pandemic, that was a great challenge. Public and private education sectors perspectives quite, differ in many ways during the pandemic as well. For Upper Austria, I would like to refer you to the presentation by Professor Mayrhofer. As a conclusion, we strongly believe that more studies are needed on both the benefits and the challenges of working from home. More studies are needed on learning from home, parents' perspective, etc. What are the best strategies that can be put in place in this new task force, skilling, reskilling, access to technology, and how to address cybersecurity challenges, personal data security, workflow, etc. These are great challenges again. Again, RLS-Sciences as a political and scientific alliance may facilitate the construction of collaborations, legal frameworks for secure exchange of data and workflow. So the key role of RLS-Sciences is very, very important there, I believe. I think it's important to highlight that the collaboration still goes on, and there are many, many other things going on. There's an international conference in Montreal next month, and there'll be a presentation by our group, and there are more than 10,000 online participants in that conference. It's called Montreal Connect, and there's a panel there taking place on Thursday, October 15, where many of experts from our group will be discussing some of the challenges related to the technologies and this new era. So thank you very much, and thanks to Stephanie, Veronique, and Florence for their input on the presentation.
Thank you, Thierry, it's an excellent opportunity for me to say that RLS-Sciences is teamwork. Sebastian, girls, and myself, we would like to deeply acknowledge the cooperation of the 21st permanent regional coordinators and 28 lead scientists for their constant cooperation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, a big thank you to the organizers in Upper Austria. Special thank you to my team and in my team to Fiona Humor. I believe, if I am right, Nora Mack, but please correct me if not, I will now hand over to you and we will have a digital excursion. And then we will come back for final remarks at the end of the session, right?
Florence, you're absolutely right. It's my part now. Many thanks for your hosting of the discussion we had right now and for sharing insights on scientific results, facilitating the exchange between RLS partner regions in order to learn from each other. We will continue now with the digital excursion.